Hi, welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History. I'm Claire Ridgway. I'm the author of a book called On This Day in Tudor History, which takes you through the year with a Tudor event and Tudor events, plural, for each day of the calendar year. And it's a book that has inspired this series, this playlist of videos, which I'm doing for every day of 2019. So I hope you don't get bored of me. Okay, we're going back to King Henry VIII's reign today. On this day in Tudor history, the 5th of May, 1542, Agnes Tilney, who was Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, stepmother of Thomas Howard, 3rd Duke of Norfolk, and godmother, sorry, the bells are ringing out for Agnes Tilney, and godmother of Princess Mary, who of course was the daughter of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. Agnes Tilney was pardoned after spending nearly 5 months imprisoned in the Tower of London. Her goods, her home, her valuables had all been inventoried and seized in the fall of her step-granddaughter Catherine Howard, who of course was King Henry VIII's 5th wife, but she had managed to hang on to her head, unlike her step-granddaughter, who of course had been executed in February 1542. Now, Catherine Howard had spent her formative years in the household of her step-grandmother, the Dowager Duchess. She had households at Lambeth, Norfolk House, and also at Horsham in Sussex. And it was in those households that Catherine had relationships with her music tutor, Henry Manox, and also with the Dowager Duchess's servant, Frances Derham. The Dowager Duchess had failed to tell King Henry VIII or his council of her step-granddaughter's sexual past. Of course, Archbishop Cranmer had been informed of Catherine's past and an investigation had been launched, and the Dowager Duchess was interrogated in December 1541. The panicked Dowager Duchess had tried to destroy evidence. She opened coffers in her possession, in her households, that had belonged to Frances Derham, and she set about destroying things that might be used as evidence, things like letters and that. But it was no good. It didn't, it didn't help. And on the 22nd of December, members of the Howard family and the Tilney family were tried for misprision of treason, for covering up treason. They were alleged to have covered up the unlawful, carnal, voluptuous and licentious life of Queen Catherine Howard while she lived with the Dowager Duchess, and they were found guilty of this. Now, the Howards and the Tilneys were eventually pardoned. Of course, Catherine Howard wasn't, and poor Frances Derham, Thomas Culpeper, and her lady Jane Boleyn all went to, all got executed for their crimes. But the members of the Howards and Tilney families who had been rounded up, interrogated and found guilty of misprision of treason were eventually pardoned, with the Dowager Duchess, of course, being pardoned on this day in 1542. But obviously their reputations lay in tatters after this, and they'd lost property, they'd lost possessions, they'd lost sort of offices and titles they may have had. So it really had a big impact on the families. Now, the pardon that was granted to the Dowager Duchess on their day stated that it was a general pardon for treasons committed before the 14th of February in the 33rd year of King Henry VIII's reign. Now, 15 days later, on the 20th of May 1542, a grant was given to the Dowager Duchess, restoring some of her manors to her, but not all of them. Norfolk House, for example, where she had lived in Lambeth, was never restored to her, but it was given to her stepson, the Duke of Norfolk, in a grant in 1543. So it did eventually go back into the Howard family. Now, although the Dowager Duchess was sickly and frail, and there were concerns about her health in 1541-2, she actually hung on a few years. She lived until 1545 and was in her late 60s when she died, so a pretty good age for a Tudor woman. She was laid to rest at Thetford Abbey on the 31st of May, but then, according to the terms of her will, she was moved to St Mary's Church, Lambeth, later that year. That church is now the Garden Museum in Lambeth. It's right next to Lambeth Palace, and you can go and visit it, although it looks like a church, but it's a garden museum and is well worth a visit. So that is what happened to Agnes Tilney, Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. She kept her head, and she was pardoned on this day in 1542. So she did have a lucky escape. The members of the Howards and Tilneys that had covered up Catherine Howard's past hadn't told the king that his fifth wife wasn't this virginal young woman. They managed to hang on to their lives, but not their reputations, and in some cases not all of their goods and property. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll see you then. You can subscribe, by the way, by clicking the button round about there, and hit the bell to be notified as well. Have a great day. Bye-bye.